Today I'm going to be giving a presentation on creating your first gem. And as it so happens, when I was making this presentation, I was in fact creating my own first gem. So don't let that scare you like I don't know what I'm talking about though. Just take it as I came from the point of view as a true beginner at making gems. So, as a true beginner of making gems, and also back when I was first learning Ruby, I was wondering what a gem was. So, a gem is a precious stone, or a semi-precious stone, that is cut, polished, or even engraved. That's what a gem is. However, if you've been programming with Ruby and you've been a Rubyist, let's say, you understand that within the context of this meetup and other people you talk to who know Ruby, gem means completely different. It's completely different. And I defined it, I guess, as a package here. Or let's say I pulled it from a blog that defined it as a package. And in that package, it has all the necessary files and information or code to be installed on your system, which is like the computer. So that's what a gem is. Now, why would we make these gems, you say? Well, you can read the slide, and I'm just going to quickly go over what I wrote down in the slide. But it's an awesome way to me to share and distribute basically your libraries, little snippets of code, things that you want to, let's say, use on many projects you're working on, but you don't want to keep copying and pasting things. One way would be to package it up in a gem and require that gem in all your different projects. I think we're all familiar at this point. If you use Rails, if you used any Ruby library, you see it as a gem and you realize it goes into a gem file or I gem install it, and these gems are really, 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 really useful for us because it's our life. Like, we use gems for everything. And when it comes down to when you're creating your own and you're thinking, how should I be handling my own code? I say if it's Ruby code, Ruby related, throw it into a gem, because sharing is caring. You want to be able to publish that sucker up, and then other people can pull down and see, let's say, your code, or in this case, it's my code. And I thought my code was awesome, and people look at it and they're like, no, it's not awesome. And then I get all this feedback, and that's through this sharing network of code with gems. But to get on with the actual talk, now that we understand what a gem is and maybe why we create one, we can kind of follow this outline that I've kind of laid out for us. But we're going to look at the gem structure, and then we're going to look at how to actually build the gem, and then we're going to actually deploy it, and then be happy about it. So, first thing is, when I was browsing the webs for how to build a gem, right, I came across many different versions, but I decided that Bundler would be the best way to go with this. So if you don't know what Bundler is basically a way for you to manage your gem dependencies on a project, and it also happens to have a really awesome tool for helping you scaffold out a gem. So we're going to need to gem install Bundler and be on our way. So we're going to, like I said, get this to bare bones land of gems, right? So first thing we need to do is find the appropriate folder we want to go into, and then we want to say bundle gem name -t. Now, Brian and Alex and I have discussed why we add the -t instead of other ways, and we came to the agreement that I would keep my slide the same because it was faster for me to continue. And I'm going to actually, let me explain really quick. So the bundle gem name, which is reader_sm Jedi, is the gem name that I'm building, right? Gem I'm building. It's underscore my GitHub handle in this case to be the semantic name spacing of the gem. There's already a reader gem out there, so this is one way to avoid conflicts. So the -t part happens to also generate a spec folder with our spec in the gem file, or actually in the gem spec, and also set up a spec helper. And the reason I added this in the slide as a default for how I think we should be building our gems is because I want us to be testing. So if you ever look at this slide again and you see that -t, you'll thank me in the long run. Oh yeah, and I also added this part where we cd into the new folder that was created, which is our gem name. And then we just do a quick bundle install, so we have our spec and random other things that we need. So this is basically what gets scaffolded out. We get at the very top, we see the gem folder, and there we get git ignores, gem files, average things, you know. But then we see the first interesting thing, which is a gem spec file, .gem spec file, which I'll go into. We see a rake file, that's for rake. We see a lid folder, and when I browsed that lid folder, I found, you know, another folder with the name of my gem. And inside that folder, I found a version.rb, which I'll also go into a little bit. If we go back out, if we cd out of those directories and we go back to where lid was, we also see next to it is a spec folder, which we all know was created by Bundler, because I just told you. So, this is cool. But as a pure beginner I still was confused what this .gem spec file was. What was its purpose? My first clue was it was called gem spec, so I decided that it probably has something to do with a specification, maybe for my gem. As it turns out, it is a specification for your gem. And in that specification, you define things like the name, the author, the version. Hopefully everyone can see this. I solarized it for you all. It basically comes out to look something close like to this. I say close because it does not generate a summary or description for your gem spec. I added that in. Maybe I should have shown 2 different slides. I didn't, but I added that in. So you see here, there's an author, my email address, don't send things, a summary, a description, my license, that I didn't formally try, but it was the default. And also, you'll notice a little required statement at the top for a version file, or a version, and then in there we include that version. So that's what that version.rb file was. So the version.rb file, as it kind of sounds like it is, it's a place for storing your gem's version. So whenever you decide to release your gem into the wild, you will, I believe you start out with 0.0.1, the semantic version. And that will be the first thing you push out. And every time you make an update worthy of your semantic version update, which is, I'm not going to go into that actually. It could be, in this case, 0.0.2, right? Or some other version that you follow. And hopefully you can see this, but I decided to show a little thing. It's just basically my module gets opened up and I have this constant called version and a string that is 0.0.1. And that's what basically gets added at that greeter SNJedi : version. So that's how the gem spec knows what version it's at. Okay, that's awesome. So now you're probably wondering, damn, Sean, where do we put the code? Where does it all go? It doesn't just magically appear there. Well, there's 2 spots. And I learned this, and this is a convention you can use. You can have your gem file, not your gem file, that's confusing. The file that's named after the gem you are building, .rb, right? That will basically, in this case, it's used for me to set up the main module for my gem, and then the folder next to it is used as a way to access other Ruby classes or other Ruby code, right? And that's where all that stuff should live, which is beautiful. Awesome, we're on the right place. So I added some code inside of my greeter_SNJedi.rb, and in there, I require the version, and I open up my module, and I say, okay, auto load this translator, and I say the path to my translator, and then I say a method, which is defined as hi, and hi happens to take in a name parameter called language, correct? And it defaults to English, because that's what I default to. And then it will create a new translator, passing in language, and then respond with the translator type. Now, this is obviously there's a couple gaps here with what translator does, but the idea here is that I'm defining what my main module is doing. It's calling out to some other code. That code lives in the folder next to it, Awesome. That's all we need to know. But here's some more code to explain the translator part. So the translator requires YAML, opens up the class translator, basically loads the YAML file, and then I create the translation for the instance of the translator class. And if you had passed in, let's say, I don't know, Spanish, the hi method will return a different version. And if you're curious how I structured my YAML, it looks something like this. Passing English, you get hello world. You pass in Spanish, you get that. Awesome. Beautiful. So, I added this slide in because technically it's correct. We should be committing our code. Forgot this slide at the beginning. So we do a git add -u, which will grab the generated files. And then I do a git add for the two specific file names because I didn't want to do a git add dot because I heard that's Alex's screen name for that. So I decided to also omit my clever git commit message because I couldn't really think of one in time. I felt like, you know, you guys can fill in the gaps. You can decide what's appropriate here. So that was all really cool, putting all that code together, getting that to work. And so I wanted to test drive it, and I didn't know at first of a way, besides building the gem and installing it, which is completely fine. But I did find one interesting way of just going into your IRB session and just basically specifying the lib folder and the module that you want to require. And then when you get into the IRB shell, it's already loaded. So then you can just say reader smjedi.hi, pass in English, and you get hello world. Pretty nifty. And then I show another example for the Spanish, just so you wouldn't be concerned. Okay, can we build it? Can we conquer this feat before us? As described, we can. So we decide to say gem build our gem spec file. That now makes all sense now, right? It's a specification. It's for our gem. We build off specifications, right? Sort of stories. And that's it. It's built. And that will generate reader underscore smjedi dash my version, my current version of the gem, .gem. And then I install it on my system. So now we go back to that definition. It's a package that I just made, right? It's a .gem package with all that code bundled up. And it has all the proper information and files to be installed on my computer, which I just did. Look at that. But did it work? First couple times, of course I had some errors. I was monkeying around and I wasn't paying too much of attention with the tutorial, but I finally got it to work just for you all, and here's the printout of basically that. If you go into your IRB shell, just by saying IRB, and then you just require my fancy module, or gem, it will work. And this time I just happen to show that we only want the Spanish version. So awesome, it did work. Yeah. Okay, but let's say you want to share this with your friends, your uncle's brother's friends, all those kind of things, right? So in order to deploy this gem to Ruby Gems, which is the repository of gems, the father of gems, we decide, or I'm forced to actually, sign up for a Ruby Gems account, which is really simple. We just have to go to rubygems.org/signup. And maybe you can see this, but I decided to take a screenshot. I'll walk you step by step what you have to do. So put in your email address. That's important. You put in your handle for like GitHub or something, right? Mine was SMJedi. And then you put in your password. And that's it. Sign up. Beautiful. No verifying or anything. But now, we get to unleash this beast into the wild. We get to open source this, right? So we decided to say gem push our gem package. And that basically will deploy this thing to Ruby Gems. But first, it will ask us for our credentials. So we go back here, remember our email address and the password we put in? Well, we just need that. And that will basically get us the keys to push up to Ruby Gems, and then we're done. And then I can even possibly show you my gem in all its glory. Go here, see my avatar. They added that after I signed up. Let's say here. Whoa ho ho! 0.0.1, huh? Gems, everyone get on your computer, go to this thing, copy and paste this, and then go into your IRB shell. I'll wait. All right.
You might find out that there are probably about 55 automatic downloaders that download everything, right?
Yes.
This is the one you downloaded and then 55 others.
I just pushed that yesterday. So that's pretty much my talk. If you have any Q's, I have A's. Feel free to ask any questions. I'll try my best to answer. I finished a little early, so we have plenty of time. I apologize. This is a very simple talk for me. Master talk. Paul?
Does anybody know how to get the source code link into the Ruby Gems page?
Oh, I think we figured
Or
that out already.
did we figure it out? I thought we did it good.
You have to click, like, you go to your Ruby Gems page for your gem, and click Edit, and there are about 5 text fields you can fill in.
That's the only one that appears from the gem spec is the home page one. But all the others in the line above that Ruby Gems allows you to put in, you go into Ruby Gems and do it yourself.
Sorry, I forgot we did that.
What they said. Yes.
I'm a little surprised to see that all you need is a username or handle and password to put things up to Ruby Gems. How do people feel about that from a security standpoint in terms of downloading random gems from rubygems.org?
Doesn't seem any less secure than cloning random GitHub repos.
Okay.
Using that code. I mean, the only guarantees around open source software is if you put in enough time and effort, you can fix the problems you have yourself. Right? Everything else is completely use at your own risk.
What does SN Jedi?
Oh, I'm so glad someone asked that. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are like, this guy. Okay. So, SN would stand for the beginning letter of my first name, S, right? N stands for the ending letter of my first name. I didn't want to use my last name, for anyone who's curious. I didn't. And Jedi happens to be because I'm born on Star Wars Day. So I thought that was clever. So it's May the 4th be with you. There you go. That's about it. Any other questions? Jason?
So I noticed to do the build the gem and to publish it and stuff, you use the actual gem commands, which I think it's great that you showed those. But when you use bundler to create your gem, like you showed, you get rate tasks to do that stuff.
I'm so glad you put that up. So earlier this afternoon, I walked in with the same kind of point into Brian and Alex's office. I left with a different point. So
After we screamed at it for about 10 minutes.
So I guess they kind of put it as maybe, you didn't have to, you don't need rake or something like that. I forgot what you guys' point was. Brian was making the argument that, because I added an R spec with bundler, that it would make the rake file with the, the spec helper for it. And he was saying, you don't need to do that. You could just do R spec init. And then Alex was like, but it's so convenient. And I left confused. So I decided to just default. But yes, he's right. You can use rake install from the rake task that bundler makes to build and install the gem on your computer. You can use rake build to just build the gem. And you can use rake release to basically push to your remote Git repository with a tag resembling the version of your gem, and then publish to Ruby Gems. That's how that works. PTs, you too. Yeah. And that's about it.
So real quick before Sean steps away, I like it. The one piece he didn't have in here that I thought could be interesting to cover. And one of the things that Bundler does that is kind of nice is a lot of gems that get packaged come packaged with a command line interface. So that you can actually run them right from the command line without having to like use the library in another project. Bundler gives you a way to pre-generate a command line interface file that is a standard wrapper that calls into a special CLI class that you create in your gems lib folder that has all those commands. Okay, so if you ever go onto Ruby Gems, or if you ever unpack a gem that you've installed, you'll see a bin folder. And if you look in the bin folder, you'll see some confusing looking code that doesn't look like it does anything except call run at the very bottom of it. And it's actually a pointer to say, hey, look in this class for how the command line interface is built. Okay, the reason I bring that up is because that ties into the fact that Bundler kind of also gives you rake, right? I'm the one that said, don't use rake because it's kind of pointless with Bundler, because the commands to build your gem and to install it and to push it to Ruby Gems is part of the built-in gem command now. So you don't need the rake helpers that you used to have to, all kinds of hoops you had to jump through, especially back in the old Ruby Forge days, but don't worry about that. The problem is, if you build a gem with a command line interface, Bundler gives you a gem called Thor that it builds in as a dependency of your gem, because Thor runs the command line interface. Thor and Rake are basically competitors for doing Ruby command line task stuff. And to me, it seems dumb to have both when you're not doing anything with the Rake, because the gem command has all of the things to build, install, and manage your gem file.
But it's fewer keystrokes. You don't have to type in the name of your gem.
If it makes you happy to count the number of keystrokes you're not using, I'm cool with that. I still think it's kind of nice.
Rake build is easier than gem build, and remembering what I called my gem and the current version.
Turns out you don't actually have to do that. You can in fact just type, I think you can just type gem build tapped.
Oh.
And I believe that works.
Well, in that case, I completely agree with you.
Have any of you used Gem in the Box or private gem servers?
No.
That's
No, but I think there are definitely good uses for those services.
What does build do?
build will basically package your gem into .gem file. So rake build or gem build will basically say, look at the gem spec file, and that points to all the source files in that spec file that you're using in the gem, and then it'll package that up into your .gem extension file.
For those that might be curious, a .gem file happens to be a specially formatted zip archive. That's really all it is.
So I omitted the binary part of my talk because I knew Brian was going to go off on it, and that would take us at least 7 minutes, which it did, in fact. So I did meet my quota, and
I'm here to help.
Brian, everybody. All right, have a nice day.